Danny Martinez sat in the hard wooden chair at the back of the courtroom. His legs swung back and forth because they were too short to reach the floor. He wore his best shirt, the blue one with tiny stripes that Carol had ironed for him that morning. His hair was combed neat and his shoes were polished. Carol always made sure he looked his best for important days. The 8-year-old boy looked around the big room with high ceilings and dark wood walls. Everything seemed so serious and scary. There were lots of people he did not know sitting in rows of chairs. Some wore fancy suits and carried thick folders full of papers. Others whispered to each other and looked worried. Carol Williams sat next to him. She had been his foster mom for 2 years now. Her hand rested gently on his shoulder. Danny could feel her fingers shake a little. She was nervous too. Paul Williams, Carol's husband, sat on the other side of Danny. Paul had taught Danny how to ride a bike and throw a baseball. He always helped with homework after dinner. At the front of the room sat Judge Patricia Stone behind a tall wooden desk. She had gray hair and wore a black robe. She looked through papers and frowned. Danny had never seen a real judge before. She seemed very important and a little scary. Tony Martinez, Danny's real dad, sat at a table near the front. He wore a clean shirt and tie. His hair was cut short and he had shaved. Danny remembered when his dad looked different. Before, Tony had messy hair and clothes that smelled bad. Now he looked like the dads Danny saw at school pickup. Next to Tony sat a woman in a dark suit. She was his lawyer. She had a briefcase and lots of papers spread out on the table. She whispered things to Tony and pointed at different papers. Tony nodded and looked back at Danny sometimes. When their eyes met, Tony would smile, but Danny looked away quickly. The other table had the state's lawyer. This man worked for the government. His job was to protect kids like Danny. He also had many papers and files. Danny's name was written on some of those files. It felt strange to know that grown-ups he never met had been talking about his life. Linda Foster, the social worker, sat in the front row. She had visited Danny many times at both houses. She asked him questions about school and friends and how he felt. Linda was nice, but Danny never told her everything. Some things were too hard to talk about. Judge Stone tapped her wooden hammer on the desk. Everyone got quiet. She started talking in a loud, clear voice. She said they were there to decide where Danny should live. Should he go back to his real dad or stay with Carol and Paul? The judge explained that Tony had been sick before. He drank too much alcohol and could not take care of Danny properly. That was why Danny had to go live with Carol and Paul 2 years ago. But now Tony said he was better. He had gone to a special place to get help. He stopped drinking and got a job fixing cars. He had a clean apartment and wanted Danny to come home. Danny listened but did not understand all the big words the adults used. Words like rehabilitation and reunification and best interests of the child. He knew they were talking about him, but it felt like watching a movie about someone else's life. Tony's lawyer stood up first. She talked about how much Tony had changed. She said he went to meetings every week where people helped him stay away from alcohol. She showed papers that proved Tony had a steady job. His boss wrote a letter saying Tony was a good worker who came to work on time every day. The lawyer also talked about Tony's sister, Maria. She lived near Tony and promised to help take care of Danny. Maria had 2 kids of her own and a nice house. She came to court that day and waved at Danny from across the room. Then the state's lawyer stood up. He talked about Danny's life before he came to live with Carol and Paul. He reminded everyone that Tony had left Danny alone in the apartment many times. There was no food in the refrigerator. Danny had missed lots of school days. His teachers were worried because he was always tired and hungry. The lawyer showed pictures of the old apartment. It was messy and dirty. The windows were broken and there were bugs in the kitchen. Danny remembered being scared in that place. At night, he would hear strange noises and voices from other apartments. Sometimes Tony would not come home and Danny would cry himself to sleep. But the lawyer also talked about Danny's new life with Carol and Paul. Danny's grades in school got much better. He joined the soccer team and made friends. Carol packed him lunch every day with his favorite sandwich and cookies. Paul read him bedtime stories and helped him with math homework. Carol and Paul had 2 other foster kids too. There was Amy, who was 10, and little Ben, who was only 5. They felt like Danny's real brother and sister now. They played games together and watched movies on Friday nights. Carol made pancakes every Saturday morning and they all helped flip them. Danny thought about his room at Carol and Paul's house. It had blue walls and posters of his favorite cartoon characters. His bed had a soft quilt that Carol's grandmother had made. There were books on shelves and toys in a big box. The window looked out at the backyard where they had a swing set and a garden. At Tony's new apartment, there was a small room that would be Danny's. Tony had bought a bed and a dresser. The walls were white and empty. It was clean, but it did not feel like home yet. Danny had only visited there twice with Linda, Foster watching. As the lawyers talked, Danny watched his dad's face. Tony looked sad sometimes, especially when they talked about the old apartment and the bad times. But he also looked hopeful. Danny could tell that Tony really wanted him to come back. Maybe Tony did love him and wanted to be a better dad. But Danny also looked at Carol and Paul. Carol wiped her eyes with a tissue. Paul put his arm around her shoulders. They looked like they might cry. Danny knew they loved him too. They had shown him every day for 2 years. The judge listened to everyone talk. She asked questions and took notes. Danny wondered what she was thinking. How do you choose between a real dad who wants to change and foster parents who already proved they cared? Danny felt scared and confused. All these adults were deciding his future, but nobody had asked him what he wanted. He was just a kid, but it was his life they were talking about. He wished he could disappear or that someone would ask him how he really felt. The morning felt very long. Danny's stomach made rumbling sounds because he was too nervous to eat breakfast. Carol reached into her purse and quietly gave him a granola bar. She always remembered to take care of him, even during scary times like this. Judge Stone tapped her wooden hammer again and announced a short break. Everyone in the courtroom started talking at once. Some people got up to stretch their legs or get water from the fountain in the hallway. Danny stayed in his seat next to Carol, watching all the movement around him. Tony Martinez walked over to where Danny sat. He moved slowly, like he was not sure if he should come closer. Carol's hand tightened on Danny's shoulder, but she did not say anything. She knew Tony had the right to talk to his son. "Hey, buddy," Tony said in a soft voice. He knelt down so he was at Danny's eye level. "How are you doing? This is pretty boring stuff, huh?" Danny nodded but did not say much. Tony looked different from how Danny remembered. His eyes were clearer now. Before they used to be red and sleepy looking. His hands did not shake anymore either. Tony used to have trouble holding things steady, but now his hands looked normal. "I know this is confusing," Tony continued, "but I want you to know that I love you very much. I made mistakes before, but I am trying to be better now. I go to meetings where people help me stay healthy. I have a good job and a nice place for us to live." Danny looked at his dad's face. Tony seemed to really mean what he said, but Danny also remembered other times when Tony made promises he did not keep, like when he promised they would go to the park but then fell asleep on the couch instead, or when he promised there would be food for dinner but forgot to go to the store. Carol squeezed Danny's shoulder gently. "It's okay," she whispered to, him. "You don't have to say anything you don't want to say." Tony heard her and looked up at Carol. "Thank you for taking such good care of him," he said. "I can see that Danny is happy and healthy. I know you and Paul love him. But he's my son and I want another chance to be his dad." Before Carol could answer, the court officer called for everyone to sit back down. Judge Stone returned to her seat and the lawyers got ready to continue. Tony patted Danny's knee and went back to his table. Linda Foster was called to speak next. She walked to the front of the courtroom and sat in a special chair next to the judge's desk. She had to promise to tell the truth about everything she knew. Linda had been Danny's social worker for the whole 2 years he lived with Carol and Paul. Her job was to check on him and make sure he was safe and happy. She visited him at school sometimes and at the Williams house. She also went to see Tony's new apartment to make sure it was a good place for a child. "Tell us about Danny when he first came to live with the Williams family," the state's lawyer asked Linda. Linda looked at her notes. Danny was very quiet and scared when he first arrived. He did not talk much to anyone. He would hide food in his room because he was afraid there would not be enough to eat later. At night, he had bad dreams and would wake up crying. She continued. Danny was also behind in school. He had missed many days and could not read as well as other kids his age. He was very thin, and the doctor said he was not getting enough good food to eat. Danny listened to Linda talk about him like he was not in the room. It felt strange to hear about himself from someone else. He remembered those first weeks at Carol and Paul's house. Everything felt too good to be true. The bed was so soft and there was always food in the kitchen, but he was scared it would all go away. What changes have you seen in Danny over the past 2 years? The lawyer asked. Linda smiled a little. Danny is like a completely different child now. He talks and laughs with the family. His grades in school are much better. He has friends and plays on the soccer team. He helps take care of the younger foster children in the home. The nightmares stopped about 6 months after he arrived. The state's lawyer showed some papers to Linda. These are Danny's school reports. Can you tell us what they show? When Danny first started at his new school, he was reading at a first grade level even though he was 6 years old. His teacher said he seemed tired and had trouble paying attention. But look at his most recent report card. He is now reading above grade level and getting mostly A's and B's in all his subjects. Danny felt proud when he heard this. He worked hard in school and Carol always helped him with homework at the kitchen table. She would make him a snack and sit with him until every assignment was done. Paul would check his math problems and help him understand the hard ones. Then Tony's lawyer got to ask Linda questions. She wanted to show that Tony had changed and deserved another chance. Ms. Foster, you have visited Mr. Martinez's new apartment several times, correct? Yes, I have. Can you describe what you found there? Linda looked at her notes again. Mr. Martinez has a 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood. It is clean and well maintained. He has furnished a bedroom for Danny with a bed, dresser, and desk for homework. The kitchen is stocked with healthy food and the refrigerator works properly. Has Mr. Martinez completed all the requirements asked of him by the court? Yes, he has. He finished an 18-month drug and alcohol treatment program. He has been sober for 20 months now. He attends support group meetings twice a week. He has maintained steady employment at Mike's Auto Repair for over a year. His supervisor speaks very highly of his work. Tony's lawyer nodded. And does Mr. Martinez have family support? Yes, his sister Maria Martinez lives nearby and has offered to help with childcare. She has 2 children of her own and no history with Child Protective Services. She seems very committed to helping Tony succeed as a parent. Danny looked over at his Aunt Maria. She waved at him and smiled. He remembered her from before when he was little. She used to bring him candy sometimes and let him play with his cousins. But when things got bad with Tony, Maria had tried to help, but Tony would not let her visit anymore. The questions went on for a long time. Linda answered, carefully and honestly. She said good things about both Tony's efforts to change and about Danny's life with the Williams family. Danny could tell she was trying to be fair to everyone, but that made the decision even harder. When Linda was done talking, she walked past Danny on her way back to her seat. She gave him a small smile and a gentle pat on the head. Danny liked Linda because she always listened to him and never made him feel like his opinions did not matter. Next, Tony's boss from the auto repair shop came to speak. He was a big man with dirty hands from working on cars. He said Tony was one of his best workers. Tony came to work every day on time and stayed late when needed. He was learning new skills and the customers liked him. Tony is reliable and honest, the boss said. He told me about his past problems and his son. He talks about Danny all the time. I can tell he really wants to be a good father. I would be happy to give him time off for school events or doctor appointments or anything Danny needs. Then Maria Martinez came to speak. She told the court about the family and how they all wanted to help Tony raise Danny. She talked about Sunday dinners and birthday parties and holidays they could all share together. She promised to babysit Danny after school and help with homework. Tony is my little brother, Maria said with tears in her eyes. I watched him struggle with his sickness, but I also see how hard he has worked to get better. He deserves a chance to be the father Danny needs, and Danny deserves to know his real family. Danny listened to all these people talk about his life. Everyone seemed to care about him, but they all wanted different things. It was confusing and scary. He wished someone would ask him what he wanted, but he was just a kid, and this was grown-up business. The morning turned into afternoon. Danny's stomach growled and Carol gave him crackers from her purse. His legs were getting tired from sitting still for so long. But the most important part was still coming. Soon Judge Stone would have to decide where Danny would live for the rest of his childhood. After lunch, Judge Stone came back to the courtroom looking very serious. She had spent the break in her private office, reading through all the papers and reports about Danny's case. Everyone could see that this decision was not easy for her. She had been a family court judge for 15 years, but cases like this one never got easier. Danny sat between Carol and Paul, feeling more nervous than before. His stomach was full from the sandwich Carol had packed for him, but he still felt sick inside. The afternoon sun came through the tall windows and made the courtroom feel warm and stuffy. Some people in the back rows fanned themselves with papers. Judge Stone adjusted her glasses and looked out at everyone in the courtroom. She cleared her throat and began to speak in her official voice. "This court has carefully reviewed all the evidence presented today," she said. "We have heard testimony from the social worker, family members, employers, and others who know this family. We have examined reports, photographs, school records, and medical files. The decision before this court is not one I take lightly." Danny's heart started beating faster. He could feel Carol's hand shaking as she held his. Paul leaned forward in his seat, listening to every word the judge said. "The law is very clear about cases like this one," Judge Stone continued. "When possible, children should be with their biological parents. Families should be kept together, when it is safe to do so. The state's goal is always reunification when a parent has shown genuine change and commitment." Tony Martinez sat up straighter at his table. His lawyer put her hand on his arm to keep him calm, but Danny could see hope growing on his father's face. "Mr. Martinez has completed all requirements set by this court," the judge said. "He has successfully finished an 18-month rehabilitation program. He has maintained sobriety for 20 months. He has steady employment and positive reports from his supervisor. He has suitable housing and family support from his sister." Judge Stone looked directly at Tony as she spoke. "The court recognizes that addiction is a disease, not a moral failing. People can recover from addiction and become good parents. The evidence shows that Mr. Martinez has worked very hard to overcome his problems." Danny felt confused. It sounded like the judge was getting ready to send him back to live with Tony. He looked up at Carol and saw a tear rolling down her cheek. She was trying not to cry in front of him, but he could tell she was very sad. "However," Judge Stone said, and everyone in the courtroom held their breath, "this court must also consider the best interests of the child. Danny Martinez has thrived in the care of Mr. and Mrs. Williams. His physical health, emotional well-being, and educational progress have all improved dramatically." The judge picked up some papers from her desk. "Danny's school reports show remarkable improvement. His teacher describes him as a happy, confident child who participates actively in class. His medical records show proper growth and development. The psychological evaluation indicates a secure attachment to his foster family." Paul squeezed Danny's other hand gently. Danny could feel that Paul was nervous too, but trying to be strong for him. "The Williams family has provided Danny with stability, love, and consistency for 2 years," Judge Stone continued. "They have helped him heal from early trauma and develop into a healthy, well-adjusted child. Danny has formed strong bonds not only with Mr. and Mrs. Williams, but also with the other children in their home." Danny thought about Amy and little Ben back at home. They were probably playing in the backyard right now, waiting for him to come back from court. Amy had promised to help him with his science project tonight. Ben always ran to hug him when he got home from school. "This court has also considered the length of time Danny has been in foster care," the judge said. 2 years is a significant portion of this child's life. During this time, the Williams family has been his primary attachment figures and source of security." Tony's hopeful expression began to change. His lawyer whispered something to him, but he shook his head and kept staring at the judge. "At the same time," Judge Stone said, "this court cannot ignore the genuine efforts Mr. Martinez has made to rebuild his life. He has shown commitment to sobriety and has worked hard to create a stable home environment. His love for his son is evident, and his desire to be a father should not be dismissed. The courtroom was completely quiet, except for the sound of the air conditioning and someone coughing in the back row. Danny could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. Judge Stone took off her glasses and cleaned them slowly. Everyone watched her every movement, trying to guess what she was thinking. When she put her glasses back on, she looked directly at Danny for the first time all day. "This is one of the most difficult decisions this court has ever had to make," she said. "On one hand, we have a biological father who has demonstrated significant positive changes and deserves recognition for his efforts. On the other hand, we have foster parents who have provided exemplary care and helped a traumatized child heal and grow." Carol was crying quietly now, but trying to hide it from Danny. Paul handed her a tissue from his pocket. Danny wanted to tell her not to cry, that everything would be okay, but he was not sure if that was true. After careful consideration of all factors, Judge Stone said, and with the primary focus being the best interests of the child. She paused for what felt like forever. Danny could hear people shifting in their seats and breathing heavily. Someone's phone buzzed, and they quickly turned it off. "This court finds that while Mr. Martinez has made commendable progress, the disruption to Danny's current placement would not be in his best interests at this time." Tony's face fell like someone had hit him. His sister Maria gasped and covered her mouth with her hands. Tony's lawyer looked surprised and started shuffling through her papers. But Judge Stone was not finished talking. "However," she said, "this court also believes that Danny should have the opportunity to maintain a relationship with his biological father, provided it is in a supervised setting initially." Danny did not understand everything the judge was saying, but he could tell that Carol and Paul looked a little less worried now. Carol was still crying, but she also looked relieved. Therefore, this court awards continued custody to the state, with Danny remaining in the care of Mr. and Mrs. Williams. Mr. Martinez will be granted supervised visitation rights, starting with 2 hours every other Saturday to be increased gradually if all goes well. Tony put his head in his hands. Danny could see his shoulders shaking and realized his father was crying. For a moment, Danny felt sorry for Tony. He knew his dad really did love him and want him back. "This arrangement will be reviewed in 6 months," Judge Stone said. "If Mr. Martinez continues to demonstrate stability, and if the visits go well, we may consider expanding the visitation schedule. The ultimate goal remains reunification if and when it serves Danny's best interests." Danny still did not fully understand what had just happened, but he could tell from Carol and Paul's faces that he would be staying with them. He felt relieved but also sad for his father. It was confusing to feel happy and sad at the same time. The judge was getting ready to hit her wooden hammer and make the decision official. But just as she raised it in the air, something unexpected happened that would change everything. Judge Stone raised her wooden hammer high in the air. She was about to bang it down on her desk to make the decision final. Everyone in the courtroom held their breath. Tony Martinez looked defeated, staring down at his hands. Carol Williams wiped away tears of relief. Paul squeezed Danny's shoulder gently, but then something happened that nobody expected. A small voice cut through the silence of the courtroom like a knife. It was clear and loud even though it came from an 8-year-old boy. "He hurt me." The 3 words hit the courtroom like thunder. Judge Stone froze with her hammer still in the air. Every person in the room turned to look at Danny Martinez, who was standing up from his seat in the back row. His small hands were clenched into fists at his sides, and his face was red with emotion. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Nobody spoke. The court reporter's fingers stopped typing. The lawyers sat with their mouths open. Tony Martinez turned around in his chair, his face completely white. He looked like he had seen a ghost. "He hurt me," Danny said, again, his voice getting stronger and braver. "My dad hurt me when I lived with him before." Judge Stone slowly lowered her hammer to the desk. She had been a judge for many years, but she had never had a child interrupt her courtroom like this. She knew that when a child found the courage to speak up about something this serious, she had to listen. "Danny," Judge Stone said in a gentle voice, "can you come up here and talk to me?" Carol stood up with Danny, but he shook his head. "I can do it myself," he said. For the first time all day, Danny felt brave and strong. He had been quiet for too long. Now it was time to tell the truth. Danny walked slowly down the aisle between the rows of chairs. Everyone watched him, but he kept his eyes on Judge Stone. When he reached the front of the courtroom, a court officer brought him a special step stool so he could be tall enough to talk to the judge. "Danny," Judge Stone said softly, "you said your father hurt you. Can you tell me what you mean?" Danny looked back at his father. Tony was staring at him with wide eyes, shaking his head slightly as if to say, "Don't tell." But Danny was not scared anymore. He had Carol and Paul and Linda, Foster, all there to protect him. He knew these grown-ups would keep him safe. "When I lived with my dad before, he used to get really mad at me," Danny began. His voice was quiet at first, but it got stronger as he kept talking. "He would grab my arm really hard and shake me. Sometimes he would push me down when I was being too loud or asking for food." The courtroom was completely silent. Everyone was listening to every word Danny said. "One time I broke a glass in the kitchen by accident," Danny continued. "My dad got so angry that he grabbed me by the shoulders and shook me really hard. My head went back and forth and it hurt my neck. Then he yelled at me and said I was stupid and clumsy." Tony tried to stand up, but his lawyer pulled him back down. "Danny, that's not—" Tony started to say, but Judge Stone held up her hand to stop him. "Let the child speak," she said firmly. Danny kept going. "Another time I was crying because I was hungry and there was no food. My dad got mad and said I was being a baby. He pushed me into my room and slammed the door. I fell down and hit my knee really hard on the floor. I had a big bruise for a long time." Carol was crying harder now, but she was also proud of Danny for being so brave. Paul had his hands clenched tight in his lap. He was angry that anyone had hurt the little boy he loved so much. "My dad would also grab my face when he was mad," Danny said, touching his own cheek as he remembered. "He would squeeze my cheeks and make me look at him when he was yelling. His fingers would leave red marks on my face that hurt for a long time after." Linda Foster was taking notes as fast as she could. She realized that in all her visits with Danny, she had never asked the right questions about physical treatment. She had focused on neglect like lack of food and supervision, but she had missed signs of physical abuse. "Sometimes when my dad was drinking, he would get confused and think I did things I didn't do," Danny said. "He would accuse me of breaking things or making messes. Even when I said I didn't do it, he wouldn't believe me. He would grab me and shake me and call me a liar." Judge Stone listened carefully to every word. She had heard many children testify in her courtroom over the years, and she could tell when a child was telling the truth. Danny's words had the ring of honesty. The details were too specific and too painful to be made up. "Danny," Judge Stone asked gently, "why didn't you tell anyone about this before today?" Danny thought about the question. "I thought all dads did that to their kids," he said simply. "I didn't know it was wrong until I went to live with Carol and Paul. They never hurt me, not even when I broke their favorite coffee mug or when I got mud on their clean floor." Danny looked back at Carol and Paul. "Carol and Paul get frustrated with me sometimes when I don't listen or when I make mistakes, but they never grab me or shake me or push me down. They just talk to me and help me understand what I did wrong. They give me hugs when I'm sad instead of hurting me more." The difference between the two families became crystal clear to everyone in the courtroom. Danny had learned what normal, loving discipline looked like, and now he understood that what his father had done was not okay. "When Linda Foster visited me at Tony's apartment, I got scared," Danny admitted. "Being in that place made me remember all the times he hurt me. I didn't want to tell Linda because I thought she might make me go back there. But today, when I heard the judge talking about sending me back, I got really scared. I don't want to be hurt anymore." Tony was crying now, but not tears of sadness. They were tears of shame and regret. He had not realized how much his angry outbursts had affected his son. In his mind, he had just been disciplining a difficult child. But hearing Danny described those moments made him see them differently. Judge Stone looked around the courtroom. Everyone was processing what they had just heard. This changed everything about the case. "Danny, thank you for being so brave and telling us the truth," Judge Stone said. "I know that was very hard for you to do. You can go back to sit with Carol and Paul now." As Danny walked back to his seat, Carol knelt down and hugged him tight. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered in his ear. "You did the right thing by telling the truth." Paul put his big hand on Danny's small shoulder. "We love you, and we will always keep you safe," he promised. Judge Stone called for an immediate break. She needed time to process this new information and decide what to do next. The 3 words that Danny had spoken, "He hurt me," had changed everything about this custody case. As people filed out of the courtroom for the break, everyone knew that when they came back, the decision would be very different from what anyone had expected. Judge Stone did not come back to the courtroom for 3 hours. During the long break, Danny sat with Carol and Paul in a quiet room down the hall. Linda Foster came to check on him several times. She brought him juice and crackers and told him how proud she was that he found the courage to speak up. "I should have asked you better questions before," Linda told Danny. "It's my job to make sure kids are safe, and I missed some important things. I'm sorry about that." Danny nodded. He was not mad at Linda. He understood that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes too, even when they are trying to help. A police officer came to talk to Danny. Her name was Officer Sarah Kim, and she was specially trained to talk to children about difficult things. She was very kind and gentle. She asked Danny more questions about the times his father had hurt him. Danny told her everything he could remember. Officer Kim wrote down all of Danny's answers in a special report. She explained that what Tony had done to Danny was against the law, even if Tony was his father. Parents are not allowed to hurt their children, even when they are trying to discipline them. While Danny talked to Officer Kim, other things were happening in the courthouse. Tony Martinez met with his lawyer in another room. The lawyer explained that Danny's testimony had changed everything. The judge would probably not give Tony custody now, and there might be other consequences too. Tony was devastated. He had worked so hard to get his life together, but he had never dealt with his anger problems. He realized now that his drinking was not the only reason Danny had been taken away. His violent behavior had scared and hurt his son in ways he never understood. "I never meant to hurt him," Tony told his lawyer through tears. "I thought I was just being strict. My own father used to hit me much worse than that. I thought what I was doing was normal." The lawyer shook her head sadly. "That doesn't make it right, Tony. Just because someone hurt you when you were a child doesn't mean you can hurt your own child. You need help learning how to be a parent without using violence." Meanwhile, Carol and Paul Williams met with their lawyer too. They wanted to start the process of adopting Danny as soon as possible. They had always hoped this day would come, but not like this. They felt sad that Danny had been hiding such painful memories for so long. "We want to make sure Danny gets counseling to help him process all of this," Carol told their lawyer. "He's been carrying these secrets for too long. We want him to heal completely." When everyone returned to the courtroom, Judge Stone looked very serious. She had spent the break reading laws and talking to other judges about cases like this one. She had also called in a child psychologist to help her understand what was best for Danny. After hearing Danny's testimony today, this court must completely reconsider its previous decision, Judge Stone announced. The new information about physical abuse changes everything about this case. She looked directly at Tony Martinez. "Mr. Martinez, while I recognize your efforts to overcome your addiction, it is clear that you have other serious issues that must be addressed. Physical abuse of a child is never acceptable, regardless of the circumstances." Tony stood up when the judge spoke to him. "Your Honor, I know I made terrible mistakes. I want to get help. I want to learn how to be a better person. That is something you should have done before asking for custody of your son," Judge Stone replied firmly. "The court cannot risk placing Danny in a situation where he might be harmed again." The judge then announced her new decision. "This court hereby terminates all parental rights of Tony Martinez. Danny Martinez will remain in the custody of the state with continued placement in the Williams family home. The court also grants permission for Mr. and Mrs. Williams to begin adoption proceedings immediately. Carol grabbed Paul's hand and squeezed it tight. They were finally going to be Danny's real parents in the eyes of the law. Paul wiped away a tear and smiled at Danny, who was sitting between them. Furthermore, Judge Stone continued, there will be no visitation between Mr. Martinez and Danny until Mr. Martinez completes anger management counseling and parenting classes. Even then, any future contact will depend on what Danny wants and what trained professionals think is best for him. Tony Martinez collapsed into his chair. His sister Maria was crying in the front row. She had truly believed that Tony had changed, completely, but now she realized there were problems she never knew about. Judge Stone turned to Danny. Danny, I want you to know that what happened to you was not your fault. Your father's actions were wrong, and you were very brave to tell us the truth today. You probably saved yourself from being hurt again. Danny nodded. He felt lighter somehow, like a heavy weight had been lifted off his shoulders. The secret he had been carrying for so long was finally out, and the adults around him were taking action to protect him. The court also orders that Danny receive counseling to help him deal with his experiences, Judge Stone said. The state will pay for this treatment for as long as it is needed. After the judge made her decision official, everyone slowly left the courtroom. Tony Martinez walked past Danny's family without looking at them. His lawyer had already explained that he might face criminal charges for what he had done to Danny. The police would investigate further. Maria Martinez stopped to speak to Carol and Paul before leaving. I'm so sorry, she said with tears in her eyes. I had no idea Tony was hurting Danny. If I had known, I would have called the police myself. Please take good care of him. Carol gave Maria a gentle hug. We will, she promised. And maybe someday, when Danny is older, he can decide if he wants to have a relationship with his aunt. You seem like a good person who was just trying to help your brother. 6 months later, Danny Martinez became Danny Williams when the adoption was finalized. Carol and Paul had another party to celebrate, just like they did when Amy and Ben joined their family permanently. Danny invited his best friends from school and his soccer teammates. Danny also started seeing a counselor named Dr. Jennifer Adams once a week. She helped him understand that the abuse was not his fault and taught him ways to deal with his feelings. Danny learned that it was okay to be angry about what happened to him, and that talking about difficult things made them easier to handle. At school, Danny continued to do well in his classes. His teacher, Mrs. Lopez, noticed that he seemed more confident and happy after the court case was over. He participated more in class discussions and was always willing to help other students who were having trouble. The soccer coach, Mr. Peterson, made Danny team captain because he was good at encouraging his teammates and never gave up when things got difficult. Danny wore his captain's armband with pride and worked hard to be a good leader. Tony Martinez did eventually complete anger management classes and parenting courses, just like the judge had ordered. He wrote letters to Danny, apologizing for hurting him and explaining that he was working hard to become a better person. But Danny was not ready to read those letters yet, and Carol and Paul supported his decision. Maybe when I'm older, Danny told them. Right now, I just want to be happy and safe with my real family. Dr. Adams explained to Danny that forgiveness was something he could choose to do or not do when he was ready. There was no rush, and no one could force him to have a relationship with his biological father if he did not want one. On his 9th birthday, Danny made a wish as he blew out the candles on his cake. He wished that all children who were being hurt would find the courage to speak up, just like he had done. He also wished that there would always be people like Carol and Paul in the world, ready to love and protect children who needed help. That night, as Carol tucked him into bed, Danny said something that made her heart feel full. Mom, he said, using the word that still felt new and special. Thank you for teaching me that families are supposed to love each other without hurting. I'm glad I'm your son now. Carol kissed his forehead and turned on his nightlight. We're glad you're our son too, Danny. Sweet dreams. As Danny drifted off to sleep in his safe, warm bed, he knew that speaking those 3 words in the courtroom, "He hurt me," had been the most important thing he had ever done. It had saved him from going back to a dangerous situation and had led him to the family where he truly belonged.